I really can't overemphasize how disturbing the response to this murder has
Yeah.
been. I mean, there are no shortage of people with terrible takes on social media,
Openly
essentially
posting.
celebrating.
Yeah, who's next?
Right. And I mean, the shooter wore a very distinctive jacket that
Mm-hmm.
apparently has been flying off the shelves.
Mm-hmm.
People have found who made. I mean, like, imagine there was a lookalike contest in Washington Square Park the other day for the
Yeah.
shoot. I mean, like, it really is kind of something out of Batman, where you have this, like, terrible person being celebrated for a heinous act. And even Ivy League professors are, posting
Of
on
course.
on X saying, well, not condoning murder, but you have to understand that this is the inevitable. No, it's not inevitable.
Yeah.
I mean, it blows my mind that it has escaped so many people, that the implications of justifying homicide based on someone else's personal moral qualms. Like, there was a Columbia professor who said something like, when business executives abandon all sense of ethics, this is the inevitable result. It's like, well, what happens if someone determines that universities have abandoned all sense of ethics, which
Right.
is an argument that can be made.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like, do you understand the can of worms that opens?
Mm-hmm.
It really is bizarre and disturbing, and it only adds to the anxiety of people, who don't want to see this sort of thing, who are watching and not only see that he gets away with it, but sees that there's a critical mass of people that want him to get away with it. And that kind of thing, I think, is going to end up spelling not the death of New York, because I don't think New York can ever die. I think it's a great city, it's a resilient city, and will always find a way to come back. But I do think it will spell a sort of downward spiral that we're going to have to come back from in the way that we did in the 1990s, which was not a guarantee.
Yeah. I don't want to beat the Batman thing to death, but it really is striking. And all the more so, sort of the latest wave, the Robert Pattinson Batmans. This is a figure who is presented as an actual detective. This is a guy who has to, like, solve crimes and, like, figure out these mysteries. And as the city sinks deeper into chaos and anarchy and evil, you start getting these figures who come up with these elaborate sort of structures that they use to sort of play with people. And when I saw the way that hit went down, and the way that sort of information started to be introduced, and they discovered the backpack and it's full of Monopoly money, and there's this whole social media thing. It's hard not to look at the way that that's playing out and to think, have we entered into a new phase of crime in American life where there is kind of this game to it? It's, you think about Pokemon Go is being harvested to create a sort of body of AI data, and it just has there's this sort of stink of, like, we are being manipulated in some way. An event like this, it doesn't seem to be as cut and dried as just, someone sort of feeling aggrieved and going out there and saying, no, I'm going to take it. It's not like the 19th century, where you have a guy sort of down on his luck and he wants to take it out on someone. There just seems to be something else going on here. Do you have any feelings about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of rise of social media has made it so that offenders like the man who killed Brian Thompson feel like if they market their actions the right way, right, they can kind of have sort of a Joker moment,
Mm-hmm.
right, and to keep the Batman analogy going. And they have figured out how to sort of play on, frankly, mainstreamed far left notions of what's just and unjust, and use that to their advantage and make themselves out to be folk heroes. It's up to us to reject that and to remind people that this isn't a comic book story, that this is reality, that you can't just take lives on the streets of major cities, and that there are going to be consequences for that. But I think the biggest fear I have is that this is opening a door to a kind of new era of political violence, which is something that characterized American life to a much more significant degree than it has recently. Back in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, especially,
Yep.
you had groups like the Weather Underground and FALN and the Black Liberation Army, regularly bombing buildings, and FALN actually opened fire on the floor of Congress.
Yeah, that's right. Symbionese Liberation Army.
That's right. So, that's the kind of more disturbing aspect of this to me, is that, especially when there's a critical mass of people who are not just failing to condemn the act, but openly celebrating it, that might encourage the sort of people who are already inclined toward political violence to maybe finally take those steps.
Yeah, and it's probably always going to be true, whether on social media or television or wherever, that if it bleeds, it leads, as they say. But just watching the way that the legacy media or whatever you want to call them, who really just they've been in free fall with viewership,
Yeah.
especially since the election. They grabbed onto this, and it's just wall to wall coverage, and
Yeah.
they're driving these narratives that this is a sort of drama that people should get caught up in.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And look, the legacy media has, you know, um, doesn't necessarily have a reputation of kind of covering these things with the most
Right.
moral clarity. So that's not really a surprise. And like you said, I mean, the legacy media, and I've written about this, has been struggling to keep eyes on it for a while now, and so I think we're well past the point in which we could ask them to be a little better about how they approach these situations. So that's just kind of baked in.
Yeah.